And a very warm welcome back to the programme. We're with John Brash of Brash Brands, and we're talking about the advertising world here in the Middle East and also brand management. Very interesting world, very interesting topic. I think it was David Ogilvy, that great advertising man, who said that when he retired, he wanted to set up a group of activists who he would equip with motorcycles to go around in the dead of night, cutting down every single hoarding that they could find, because he was basically a great ad guy who was against visual noise. What do you think about the pollution of the hoardings and the outside signage that we're now seeing in Dubai?
Well, I think it's a fair, I mean, that's a fair comment. I think that there's a balance, and I think that the guerrilla advertising can be a very effective way for certain brands to communicate what they're about. If you look at the outdoor media, I think again in this region, it's quite challenging because of the statistics that a lot of clients don't understand how many consumers are actually touching their communication. Whereas outdoor, they can physically see the amount of cars that are passing. So psychologically, it's easier for them to understand. But the problem is, it's just becoming wallpaper. And if you look at Sheikh Zayed Road specifically, and you see these huge hoardings, then really it's very difficult to actually do anything that you're going to actually stand out and communicate something differently.
I'm just wondering if you think that the government should step in and say, well, never mind whether clients or rather consumers are able to see, you know, the wood from the trees, as it were, but it's just ugly and we're going to, you know, get rid of it.
I think that again, it goes back to the growing market. I think if you look at other more sophisticated markets, then the control of outdoors is far greater. There'll be key hoardings in cities that you'll have, or certain areas that local authorities will actually look at. Because this is in a way virgin territory, everything's going up. I think as time moves on, I think more and more regulations will come in place to can actually control that. But also here, brand is really important to the consumers here. The mass affluence, public really, they like brands. And it's very difficult to convince a client that they shouldn't spend money on an outdoor advertising because everyone else does it. And in a way, it's a bit like the souk mentality, whereas if someone does it, then they should do it. So it's very, very difficult for a client to think laterally or differently about where they should actually spend their money.
Yeah, I'm just interested though still to pursue this line of discussion though, John Brash, because, you know, I see some lovely buildings here which the architect presumably never imagined there would be a tri-media sign on top of. And equally the client will think, well, that's a fantastic location. I'm going to put my ad on that tri-media sign. It's rented out to me. You end up ruining the piece of architecture potentially, and by association, perhaps you impinge upon the success of the brand.
Again, I would fully sort of support that. It's a real challenge because, again, when an architect creates a building, they're probably expecting that a name of a building or a brand mark will have to go on that building, but not anything else. I think that if the client knows from day one they want to have this, then the building could be designed with that in mind. So you could have fantastic dot matrix things like you would have in Times Square. But Times Square is Times Square, just as the centre of Tokyo is. But in certain areas, it should not be seen or touched. I think one of my old offices I worked in became known as the Panasonic building, purely because Panasonic took the big sign, whereas before it was called Emirates Neon, and that's how people refer to it. So it is a dangerous thing, and I think that I'm hoping that regulations will come in the future that will start controlling that more. But, you know, in the UK, if you take example, I had to put a small window in my 380-year-old house, and it took 2 years to get a window approved, which was less than 1 metre by 2 metres. So that's where you get real restrictions.
That's over-prescriptive.
That's over-prescriptive, but I do believe that you need some. And again, in a lot of markets, you would have not only planning consent, but you have what you call advertisement consent. And that means when you put in to do a hoarding or a window dressing, you need approval for it. I don't think that happens today. It may do, but it
well, I think there is a body which deals with that in Dubai, but I think they've adopted a bit of a laissez-faire attitude. I mean, apparently it's illegal to have any backlit signage in Dubai, if you look at the law, but my goodness, how much must there be? And also, where would you stand if you were talking to the RTA right now in Dubai, who are trying to flog off their stations to the highest bidder? so that, you know, a big organization like Panasonic, let's say, could have the Panasonic station, and that would go into the lexicon of destinations in Dubai. You think that's a good idea?
I personally wouldn't do it. I think that when you build a city, and I think Dubai's next stage is to become a world's great city. It is a great city as it stands today, but a great city as in a New York and a London. And to do that, there are certain components that need to start happening. And that's taking ownership of the I would say the crown jewels of certain things. And these stations are critical, and they should be linked to the location of that area, less as opposed to the brand. Now, within the station, certainly you could allow areas for branding or communication within there, but I personally wouldn't go as far as to name a station Panasonic, you know, T-Com or T-Com Panasonic. You know, you can look at other industries like football or even Formula One, where you know, McLaren team is now, you know, McLaren West. Well, it was McLaren West Mercedes, and now it's Vodafone McLaren Mercedes.
All right. I wanted to talk to you also a little bit about a topic which you raised in our first segment, which is about the quality of people, because you need quality people in your business and the advertising agencies. What about the client side, however? Has that got a ways to go in getting people who actually understand what you're talking about?
Absolutely. I think again, in the 5 years I've been here, I've noticed things are getting better, but there's still a long way to go. And I think the budgets that a lot of clients here are huge. And you know, for any creative person, you think this is absolutely incredible, because the way that this market works is probably more dynamic than any other market in the world, apart from London or potentially New York, when it comes to that. So there's a lot of money here. And I think you know, if a client will end up spending the money the way they always did, I would put a big question mark there and say, look, you know, we need to start thinking about the best way to communicate, the best way to invest your money versus your core target areas.
So it's about new channels of...
Could be new channels, could be new ways of thinking. And I think that the trouble is here is everyone is busy. It's a busy place. I mean, it is like the gold rush. So therefore, I think a lot of clients, if they get it 80% right, they're happy. And in a way, in a growth market, they don't necessarily have time to get the last 20% right. Now, people can come in from the more markets like the UK and then come in here and complain and just say, you know, this is crazy, this place is just not working properly. But in a way, you've got to also understand that the growth markets such as this region, the MENA region, India and China, people can't wait for people to catch up. So in a way that you have to adapt. And I had to learn to adapt and actually take the experience I had from working on some of the big accounts, but also understanding what the client's needs are. You know, we had clients who wanted to rebrand a telecom in 11 days. And it was
here
in this region. And in the UK, I mean, okay, that they knew that the deregulation of the market was happening for 2 years, and all the strategy had been done, but the visual identity hadn't been done. And in a way, you could complain and say, this is crazy, we're not interested. Or you can actually say, what a challenge, how can we do this? And to me, that's what makes this place really exciting. So yeah. I look at that
from
the
speed at which things happen. Yeah, absolutely. All right, John, well, we'll take another short break, and we'll be back with John Brash after these messages.